Greetings, virtual pilots. The RAF and I think most of the Russian planes in World War II have this rather different method of braking from the modern style toe brakes that you find on American and German planes at the time. The brakes are operated by this lever mounted on the stick, and you use this in conjunction with the pedals to get differential braking to help you steer. But the problem for flight sims is that most joysticks don't have a conveniently located axis control mounted on the stick, and so you end up having to operate this little lever with a slider or a knob somewhere, which is not really very convenient, and you have to pull it on, pull it off and stuff. So I think I and probably a lot of other people end up putting this on a button, which works better, but the problem is it makes the brakes rather binary. They're either full on or full off, and you can see that trying to bring this mozzie to a stop here is quite brutal on the tail wheel. It keeps wanting to nose over and stuff. So is there a way of using this from a convenient button but making it a little bit more controllable? Well, if you're using Joystick Gremlin, there is a way, and I'll show you how to do it here. So let's just pause this, and I shall bring up my Joystick Gremlin. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an axis control in the VJoy device to operate the brakes, so we can be a bit more subtle. And I'm going to use the slider axis here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into settings, and I'm going to set this slider its default position to -1. So in other words, fully at one end with no braking at all. And then we'll go into X52, which is the my preferred joystick at the moment, and I'm going to use button 5 to operate the brakes. So what I'm going to do is we'll just call this brakes ramped, and I'm going to use a macro here. So select macro and add, and we're going to add a line into the macro which defaults to pause, but we don't want to pause. We want to affect our VJoy device, and we want to affect the slider axis, and I'm going to put in here a value of 0.05. And very important, I'm going to make this relative. So instead of sending the axis to that value, it will add that value to the value that's already there. And then down here in this box here, I'm going to select from here hold. So what that'll do is, for as long as I hold the button down, it will keep increasing this value until I release the button. And I'm going to put a delay in here of, I'm also going to use 0.05 in there. So hopefully what's going to happen is that when I press the button, the brakes are going to ramp up with a little bit of time, so that I can control the brakes a little bit better. And if we go to just start that running, and if we look at our input viewer, and we can look at our Joy device. So this is axis 7, this is what I'm going to be using for, and we'll have a look at our buttons as well. So here we can see that when I press the button, the braking ramps up, and the longer I hold the button down, the bigger the braking gets. So if I just restart. So we start off with no braking at all. I press the button, the brakes ramp up. As I hold the button, they keep ramping up. So now we have the problem that the brakes are now full on. I've let go of the button and we need the brakes to release. So how do we do that? Well, we do that with another macro. So I'll come back into here and I'll select macro again, add another one, and we can see it's appeared down here. So we go down here, add a line. We don't want pause. We want to affect our V-joy, our slider axis, and I'm going to put in here the value of -1. And this time I am going to leave this on absolute because we want it to absolutely go to that value. -1, no braking at all. And I'm going to set a condition in here because we want this to happen when we release the button. So I'm going to apply some conditions to it, and I'm going to say this condition is going to be this action, but I want it to happen when the button is released. So when I release the button, the brake will go back to 0 again. Okay, so let's just see if that works. So we've got no braking. Press the button, release, press the button, release, press the button, release, press the button, release. And the brakes are building a little bit slowly there, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, instead of 0.05, I'll try 0.02 in there and see how I get on with that. So now if I just want a little bit of braking, I can just pulse the button a little bit and I get gentle braking, but if I hold it, the brakes are going to build. They're still maybe a little slow. Try 0.01 in there. I did see an interview with a real-life Mosquito pilot, and he said it takes about a second for the brakes to actually start to do anything after you pull the lever. So there we are. So little pulses, I just get a little bit of braking, but if I hold the button, the brakes build up. So hopefully I can get a bit more subtle control of the braking with that. So now we'll get rid of those. Just move that over there, and we'll come back into here and go adjust controls. And we'll search for the brakes. So here's my current setting. This is straight mapped to the button on my HOTAS. So we'll delete that one, and we'll go and find the axes commands. If I scroll down to the bottom here, here's the wheel brakes, and if I have to pull this scroll bar across, I don't know why they don't make this window bigger so you could do this without scrolling, but here's my V-joy device, here's the brakes. So if I tell it that I'm going to use, this calls it slider 1 for that, so hopefully we should now have a bit more analog control of our brakes. So there we go, the brakes come on slowly, but the observant will notice that I've got it backwards. The brakes are full on. When I press the button, they release. So we just need to invert that. Just controls again, V-joy device, axis commands, wheel brakes, this one here, tune and invert, and there we go. And now we should be able to control the brakes just a little bit more subtly than, see, I can just give little pulses and I don't get the full braking. Okay. Now the Mozzie has a bit of a reputation for being a bit tricky to take off, so we'll just see if we can demonstrate that here. I like a little bit of right trim on the rudder, just till the T, needle is on the T, and I also like one notch of, you can see down there, one notch of right trim on the ailerons, and you have to lean forward to get 1.5 notches of nose down. If you don't lean forward, you get a load of parallax on the view and it doesn't look right. Okay, so we want full RPM, and I like to go for about 15 degrees of flaps. Okay, and I think we're ready to go. Okay, so pull back on the stick, hold it on the brakes. This is my method anyway. Run the engines both up to about 0 boost. Just Just let the RPM steady, and then release the brake, release the back pressure, and off she goes. Once she's rolling straight, just put a tap on the brakes there just to hold her. Throttle up, throttling up, throttling up, full throttle. She gets a little bit squirrely just as the tail wheel lifts, so just a little bit of rudder there, a bit of rudder back, and take off at about 120 knots. And there we are, we're up. Positive rate of climb, and gear up. It's reasonably straight off the runway there. Nose down a bit. Accelerate up to about 140-ish, something like that, and the flaps can come up. And just pull the RPM back to about 2700, and we're up and away. So there we go, that's my method for taking off with a Mosquito. Hope this helps if you're struggling to get your Mozzie to run straight. A little bit more subtle control on the brakes certainly helped me. That's it for now. Cheerio.